Hold on. I'm getting emotional.
Do it. Feel it. Oh.
It's our first episode back in our new set. Oh my god.
This is the Cinematography for Actors podcast.
More than a podcast, Cinematography for Actors is a vibrant community devoted to bridging the gap between talent and crew. Each week, our show offers transparent, insightful conversations with industry leaders. We unveil the magic behind the scenes, from candid discussions about unique filmmaking processes to in-depth technical exploration. Join us in unraveling the intricacies of filmmaking, one episode at a time. It's more than just cameras and lenses. We aim to inspire, educate, and empower as we peel back the curtain on the art of effective storytelling. Now on to the episode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back, finally, to the CFA podcast. I am one of your hosts, Haley Royal.
Who are you?
I'm Indiana Underhill. I almost said Indiana Royal. Because it just feels like we're married all the time. But it has been like a year in the making here at CFA. We had an inspo of a 70s vibe, and I feel like we've achieved that. We have a few little things left, but we're pretty close, I'd say. Yeah. And we're close enough we're shooting in it.
We're going to put some plants up here so it feels even 70s-er.
Exactly. But what's really exciting, because we should do a montage eventually of Haley and I just being like, we're really excited. We are really excited, Haley and I, to welcome a good friend of ours, Giovanni Labadessa.
That's the full name.
How do I say it in an Italian accent? I mean, you'll just say it normally.
Can I try?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Giovanni
Labadessa.
Labadessa.
That's how I would have done it.
No. How are you going to do it?
Giovanni Labadessa.
Oh, okay. Giovanni Labadessa.
That's it. That was it.
Imagine if I just started speaking fluent Italian.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. I don't think anybody would be surprised by that.
I would be
We'd
surprised.
all just be like, yeah, of course.
Like that host.
Yeah, she did. Okay.
Yeah.
She also speaks Italian.
There we are. Gio, welcome to our first episode in our new set. This is
gorgeous.
Thank you.
Hold on. I'm getting emotional.
Do it. Feel it. Oh.
It's our first episode back in our new set. Oh my god. This is so exciting.
It is.
We've been working so hard on this set.
And talk about the evolution of our podcasting in general for this podcast.
Our podcasting in general. Wow. I didn't know I was going to sob about it.
Aw.
I'm so excited. We really put so much of our, yes, we did try to hire help for this, but in the end, it ended up being so much actual manual labor, which is kind of feels like the name of the game for you and me.
We stacked all these blocks by hand. We grouted them.
We did
the silicone. We had Doug Barden come in and help kind of create some safety around it and then create the paneling.
I mean,
our team glued the dowels. Yeah. We worked with Roscoe, who, thank you so much, Roscoe, for doing a custom soft drop for us that we're lighting. And our Roscoe is also the sponsor of these lights above us. So we really used our network and our arms and legs and brains to put this together. Even the design of the couch.
We really practiced what we preached here.
Yeah.
Our evolution of podcasting.
Yeah, Gio, do you want to hear about the evolution of the CFA podcast?
I am all ear. I'm stoked every time I come around you guys. Every time I spend time with you, there is something new, something cool. So yes, please.
Well, we have a reason we brought Gio in today, and we're gonna get into
We'll
that.
get to
but
it.
we need to talk about, for those who are tuning back in or see this pop up in their notifications for the first time in a while, the evolution of this. So Haley, how did we start the podcast, and what have been the different stages of that?
Okay. We started this. So one thing that we always did that I think is a big credit to you is we always had a video component. From day one, from the very first episode, you wanted to have a camera on us for it.
Yeah.
And there were definitely days where we were like, do we have to do that? And it was just yeah, that's important to us because it's it's cinematography for actors, and we gotta, like, they need to see us.
Yeah.
But we started, our very first episode was at Soho Works.
Yes.
In a little room with air conditioner blowing directly on the mics.
I think we forgot to turn the mics on when listening back to that audio. Knowing how mics sound, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, because we could look back at it and look at the mics and tell if we actually had turned them on, because we learned how to use those mics later.
From Apogee.
Yeah, they were the Apogee mics, but they may very well just not have been on at all.
And we recorded the video on my screen in photo booth.
It was on
my laptop screen.
Yeah. It sounded awful.
Awful, but it was a really good episode.
It was a great episode. The heart that is always here was there at the very beginning. We knew exactly what we like wanted to be building together, even though it was like just at the beginning. Wow. Yeah. That was such a cute little episode. We paid so much for that room.
Oh, so much.
And then we were like, we can't ever do that again.
Correct.
So we had to find another solution. And that's where we found Pirate.
Yeah.
Was Pirate very next?
Yeah.
So you found Pirate.
Yeah, it was like a rental space that it still exists for practicing rooms for musicians. And then they had podcast rooms that it started at like, I think it was $10 an hour or $15 an hour.
Yeah, we got a really great rate in the beginning.
And it came with the Rodecaster and 4 mic stands and everything in a fully soundproofed 10 by 10 room. The only problem was the lighting was horrible. So for video, it really hurt the standard of video. It
sounded pretty good.
It sounded great.
But the look was bad.
Yeah. And then we edited everything in DaVinci Resolve, and it was on our phones with little stands that we have over there. And we would just press record separately. And then I had to edit and sync everything and edit every episode with 2 to 4, depending on how many guests we had, phone cameras going, and the Rodecaster audio files. That was a nightmare. I hated that.
Yeah, I remember we had to like
line them up
in the
horrible.
I remember sitting at HiMat like trying to learn how to use DaVinci
I was like, you
Resolve.
Need to do one episode, please.
And you're like, export the DRP, and I was like, did I do it? And I was like, now it says there's no meat. I don't know what happened. And you're like, it's a proxy, and I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Oh, thank you for bearing with me for that. That was the majority. Before we got the studio, that was the bulk of our episodes on the podcast were at Pirate, and then they raised their rates, and we were
they raised their rates astronomically.
Yeah,
like, they wanted to charge us 3 times.
Yeah, and that's true, and they wanted to charge per guest that you had.
That's
so
silly.
we would do 8-hour days where we would do 4 to 6 episodes. So just book it out for the day, and that was a podcast
and it
day.
cost us like $110 total, you know?
Yeah. And then it ended up being like, triple that. And so we were like, this is just not sustainable. We hate editing as well. And then we brought on our first editor, Mario, from AFI, who's fantastic. So thank you, Mario, for all of those episodes. And that was kind of on like a case-by-case basis for like important episodes. And then we got our studio. And then we got the space we're in, because this is obviously a studio set, but like the space that we're currently in, if we were to turn these cameras around, we inherited. And it was an empty garage with mountains of cardboard that we had to pay to get picked up and taken to a dump.
And when we say mountains, like it went up to our collarbones.
Yes,
that was the height, and it was like it's like a 6-car garage.
Yes.
So it was just the floor was lined in cardboard, and then the mountains
and garbage
went up to our collarbones.
Yeah,
we paid a lot of money to have that removed. Like it was like $600.
Yeah. And so that began the journey of clearing out the studio and making it a space we wanted to invite people to. And with that, we started podcasting on just some couches in like a very traditional living room set, which was like 2 couches that we bought or like borrowed from people and decorated with carpets on them to make them look better and cover the stains. And I'm looking like past the camera because they're right there.
We still have them.
We have not gotten rid of them. We're still pretty trashy about
them a lot.
And we did that for like a year. Yeah. But then we weren't inspired by it anymore.
And we will also don't forget the booth.
Oh my God. We built where we are sitting right now.
it began as a 10 by 10
box,
little dark box
that Doug Barden built.
And then we expanded it 2 more feet.
Yep.
Which was a whole thing.
And then we didn't have AC.
So
everyone was sweating in the interviews with drops of sweat.
We have interviews we can find where we had like a Jack on as a guest, and he's like wiping his brow and we're all just like dying in this booth. And then we got like a portable AC that we used in there.
Had to turn it off.
We had to turn it off in between interviews. So during the summer, we're like, come in, guest, sit in this hot like booth with us and try to tell us something about yourself.
I've been to the studio when the booth was still on.
Yeah.
And
and we kept trying to light it, but then everyone was like, oh, it looks like an interrogation room, because
it was worse than Pirate.
It was worse. It was way worse. And it was
so
just
dark.
like old wood and like warped, and we like hand painted everything, and Haley had to correct all of my painting because she's very precise and I'm very much like, let's get it done. So there were like handprints on the wall from where I like
there was an argument over joint compound where at one point and he had just a handful of joint. She'd given up on tools, had a handful of joint compound and was like rubbing it in, and I was like, that's not gonna work. And she was like, we're not doing joint compound anymore. It's a scheme by Big Joint Compound, Big Plaster,
because they want you to get more tools.
And then like everything dried and just like things started cracking across the wall.
And we like stained the carpet. There was like plaster everywhere, and like we had to sand it. And my parents flew in from Canada, and while we were out of town, they came in with like hazmat suits and like airbrush painters.
They tried so hard to make it look nice, and it was just so dark. It was too dark, is what it came down to.
It just didn't have the space either for the camera setup we needed. Like, we're utilizing right now probably about 20 feet by 15 feet of space.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the soundproofing in there was not, like, the reason we had a booth was we thought it would be better for soundproofing, but it never was. So we ended up just moving it out to the couches where the lighting was beautiful and the sound wasn't great, but like it looked really good, and it was like way more friendly for our guests. So now we figured out that we can fix a lot of the sound if we get better mics.
Which
we did.
Nico Pierce, because we now have these SM58s from Shure that are fantastic. And Black Magic, huge thank you, I have to say, are one of our biggest sponsors ever. Not only are we shooting on all of their cameras with converters going into their HD8 ATEM switcher, but they've just made that editing process so seamless because we now have a full-time editor. Thanks, Lester. And a full-time team. Thank you, Chris, G, Desiree, and Grace. And they are able to do a lot of the post work. And the best part about using a switcher, if no one knows here, is we have a mixer that all of our mics go into that feeds into the switcher and then automatically records to an SSD. Every camera is recorded into that file. And if you had a live switcher behind the switcher itself, you could just open a DRP and drag where those cuts are. So it makes it a lot more seamless.
By live switcher, you mean a person switching the cameras, pushing the buttons, making the cuts.
Yes. So now we are here.
Now we're here.
Our own studio set.
We have forced Gio to sit quiet
for 20 minutes.
The more I learn about you guys, and the more obsessed I become about all your programs, all your history, the way you do things. Every time I come in the studio, for me, it's a learning process. So thank you for having me, and thank you for having me sit throughout the history of the CFA podcast, because now I know a little bit more about it.
You do. And Gio, speaking of programs, we met at Holly Shorts last year as our second year of being their podcast partner. And we love that team, and you do too. And we listened to a panel you were on because you're the founder of one of the founders of Not Film Fest in Italy.
Yes.
That we will be going to this
year.
We're
going to. Yes.
And the more we talked, the things that really spoke to us were like your passion for this industry and creators and emerging filmmakers and supporting them through their journeys, anywhere from, the first project they do up to their, 10th feature, and we really vibe with that because obviously we're about community building and education, and you are too, and there's so much overlap. So that when we were thinking about new programs to create together, all of us, we announced recently at NAB what that program is. And Gio, would you like to do an announcement of kind of what the program is?
Yes. So there was one thing that we were discussing that we thought could have been a benefit for emerging filmmaker, for first-time director, for filmmaker that are in the work with something. And that was tap onto the post-production.
Yeah.
And the idea was to create an ecosystem where we could provide a similar space that the studio have. So audience feedback, mentors, and an environment that can be supportive of a time where a lot of critical decisions are made. And so a lot of professionals can come in and support those filmmakers in a moment where sound might not be fully there, VFX might not be fully there, perhaps the cut might not be fully there. So like all those little elements that can be supportive of the end product more often are not available to emerging filmmakers or to short film filmmakers. And why not create an environment where that can be possible? And was actually something that we were discussing here in the studio of like, what could be a cool idea? Something that we can develop and bring our energies together. And that was it. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, because the Work in Progress Lab that we're launching with Not Film Fest with Gio is, really about the pipeline that CFA has created. So we have the Screenwriting Fund, we have the Film Challenge, we have fiscal sponsorship, so helping your films get made with alternative financing. We have labs and workshops to educate you throughout that process. We have partnerships with specific companies that lead to networking events or supported classes. And then one of the things that we really wanted to tackle was that post-production and specifically marketing and distribution. Over the past year, there's been a huge focus on Haley and my education around festival strategy, working with Katie Bignell and Ian over at Festival Formula as festival strategists, working with you and hearing about, being a festival founder and what that looks like and the type of films you accept. We sit now on viewing committees for Proof and Holly Shorts, and we're really getting involved in that area of it. And it is unfortunate that a lot of filmmakers in the short sphere or even first feature are funding it themselves with their personal network. And so it's very high stakes because it's their card into the industry. And why not have the same workflow or the same standards that like a studio or a streamer has for its films, which normally go through a test screening or a few of them with an audience in front of that giving feedback before it's locked. And so we want to introduce short filmmakers specifically before they lock their cuts and give them help and screen in front of a curated audience that is not just their personal network. Because at the end of the day, like, your personal network can really only give you such good feedback because they have so much context, and that's hard because they're not ever able to be just a voyeur. And the majority of us are not making movies for our personal network only. So we're really excited, once again, about bringing this to the table and to the screen. And so what that process looks like is you apply with your project. You tell us kind of where it's at. So is it you need help with post in terms of like composing sound, post sound? Is it VFX? Is it color? And then we will gather a group of those short films and then bring in an industry mentor like from Gio's network or our network that does a 30-minute intensive masterclass on things you need to know, things to consider. That industry mentor will sit alongside our curated audience of 30 to 40 people and give feedback through test forms as well as like a little in person, but most of it will be onto like a feedback form that is created, and we will navigate the feedback with the filmmakers. And one of the things Haley and I have been talking about that I'm excited to do is, and that we've tested on one of my own short films we've been doing, is having like general, micro, and macro questions. And so you're asking for really specific feedback so you can see where the trends and the themes and the overlap is, rather than just, did you like it? What did you like? Instead it's, did this line sell? How long did it take you to understand that this character was this profession? Or rank the characters from likability to blah. Who is the hero? Who is the villain? Have people really dive in and see what they understood. And that's what I think is really cool, because you can then program that feedback into a shareable document with the filmmakers that says, like, this isn't working, this is, people really fell flat here. And that's what I'm really excited about, because I love metrics. So.
You said something a few minutes ago that really struck me that I think I hadn't thought about before. Yeah. Filmmakers making a short film are putting their own money into it.
Yeah.
Are using the money of their personal contacts to build it. And like you said, a lot of the time, your personal network who you have access to is not always going to give you the most accurate feedback. They're also a lot of the time going to be afraid to tell you if something's not working. Also, they may not have the education a lot of the time, or just the experience to be able to give you the feedback that you need. And it's such a shame that this sort of thing doesn't exist already widespread, because yes, if you're in the studio system, you get that kind of feedback for something that you're not even, like, there's no skin off your nose if it doesn't work, So it's so high stakes, and it's so important that these filmmakers who, like you said, this may be what they're planning on to be their calling card. Yeah. This may be their one chance. So having these kind of metrics is so important. And it just, like, I don't know, it blew that open for me a little bit, because I'm thinking about, like, they're putting their lives on the line to, like, metaphorically, to, like,
their creative lives on the line,
to make this one thing, and it may be their only shot. Like, they really need this kind of support.
Think about it. Being a part of a work in progress lab for a short, that's free.
Yeah.
Also teaches filmmakers, or you who are listening, how to take feedback and apply it.
Which is very important.
Because a lot of the time, when I'm working with some newer directors, it's like, but I didn't feel that way. And you're like, okay, that's great. Right. You've made the project you want to make, but now it's going to an audience. Like, and have the audience, like, have your target audience. But if your target audience is sitting there telling you this doesn't work, you're going to lose them. And so I think it's so great, because you're going to learn how to, adhere to feedback and decide what notes you take and what you don't. And also something, Haley, a part of that sad world that we live in for short filmmakers is they then go on and spend about $2,000 to $3,000 on festival submissions. And we want to make sure that the jury or the review committee, selection committee that's watching it is watching that best piece of work that they can, because we want to give films that are good a fair shot. And we don't want it to be, where you're spending thousands of dollars and then you get into like one festival that might not even be that reputable of a festival, but accepts you because they can, rather than they want to. And that's a huge part of it as well, because it doesn't just end after the film's done. It's like, okay, here's another $2,500 for me to apply to 500 festivals.
We have to keep spending money. Yeah. And then if you get into a festival, then you're spending the money to go to that festival.
Correct.
So it's
an important topic, understanding like distribution, understanding the life of the film and what entails making the movie. Not just like, okay, we have a great film in our hands, but then what happened, understanding the scope of distribution, understanding how to navigate such a complex, very busy environment. It requires a little bit of research. It requires a little bit of knowledge. It requires understanding what are festivals doing, why they're doing it, what are you doing at the same time with your film? Like, what are you aiming for? And I spent probably like 30 minutes to an hour every day with filmmakers that were like, oh, can we have a coffee? Can we chat a bit? And I do it every day to meet people, to like communicate something that I think is important. And sometimes I see great film and they tell me like, oh, I'm aiming for this, this, and that. And I'm like, I think you're aiming wrong. I might be wrong, but I think you're aiming wrong. And sometimes, like 6 months later, we're having the same conversation where I believe the film wasn't a fit for those specific festivals, and then they come back to me. I'm like, hey, I only got rejections. What can I do now?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, try to tip in the right direction. It's sometimes that's all it takes. Like seeing what the film can do, understanding what the film can do. It's such a benefit, because then you start saving money. Then your money are gonna go much further away. Yeah.
So let's break down a little bit what a filmmaker can expect from the Not WIP program.
Absolutely.
From application to receiving feedback and beyond even.
Yes. So obviously we're looking for films that are not finished. We're looking for films that are in progress, not locked cut. We're looking for films that are looking for feedback, which is very important. So we will ask you, what is your goal here? What do you wish to gain out of this? And based on that, we will assign you people that can provide you that feedback, that can support you with that. So those films, work in progress, will have the support of professionals, mentors that can talk about post-production in all aspects, from creative to technical to the further after the film is finished to distribution. And that process takes place for the first session at the end of May here in Los Angeles. We'll have a session abroad for Not Film Fest, which the festival will host, and then back in the States. But there will be live sessions, which the filmmaker can attend either remotely or in person.
Yes. Everything will be live streamed. So even if you're not based in LA or you're not going to Italy, you can still participate virtually, and we'll still have that audience, and you'll still get all that feedback.
Absolutely. And the ultimate goal is to provide you as many tools as possible for you to get to the next step, which means finish your film and be ready for distribution.
And have a successful festival run, fingers crossed.
Exactly. Put you in that position. And, our goal is to make sure that you can get the furthest.
Yep.
You can get also in the best, healthiest possible way, because we found that not reclaiming rejection, because that's the one thing that we all have in common as filmmakers.
Lots of rejection therapy.
If there is one thing that you and Spielberg for sure have in common, it's rejection.
We've all been rejected so many times.
Yes.
I'm only afraid of Haley rejecting me now.
Oh, wow. You shouldn't be, though.
She rejected me this morning.
I don't think it was a rejection.
I knew that that's a little bit of what was going on. You weren't ready to talk about it.
I wasn't ready to get rejected by Haley.
We weren't ready to discuss that that's what was happening.
Heavy cream in it. That looks like whipping cream at this point.
We can move on. I wasn't rejecting you personally.
I'm making a joke.
Okay. Just don't say no to her.
Yeah. That's correct. Don't. I like feedback, but it should be productive and constructive. It shouldn't be cut off.
If you want to tell Indiana no, you have to say yes, but. You can't say no.
I'd be really good at improv. That's all we're saying.
Can you
hire me for your troupe?
Will you please talk about the metrics that we're so excited about?
Yes, but what did you have to say?
I was gonna say, if there is one thing that I'm always inspired by you guys, it's the determination, and that shows in all modes.
Yeah.
Of your
yes.
I think we need to do a record draw, what is it? Scratch?
Record
scratch, and go to the episode where Haley and I are fighting,
shouting at each other,
and she just goes, "I need a minute." We cut the episode.
Oh, you mean the one when I cried?
Yes, after New Year's.
We were trying so hard to make up because we were still actively in a fight, but we were like, "Can we just get through this, please?"
Podcast episode.
And then we started crying.
Yeah.
Well, I did.
Maybe we can find that, Lester.
And that's Cinematography for Actors podcast.
Yeah.
We're gonna cry now.
Oh, okay. Be honest, you're good. I'll continue to talk.
I just love you.
Oh,
Okay. Should we
let's get through
recoup?
our little. Yeah. Do you want to break for a sec?
Fine.
We can break. Let's cut for a sec.
I listened to it recently.
Oh, whoa. I don't know if I can. Ooh, I don't want.
That's a real podcast, though. That
yeah.
it should be like slice of life.
The idea with the podcast, like now, I think, is to do less interviews. So like really get interviews in when we want them, but like less interviews every episode and more about like the growth of CFA.
Building the company
Because
together.
the majority of the people listening, even if you're new here because of Geo, like this podcast is all about growing in our industry, and a lot of that is reflected in the growth of our company and the new programs that we have, the people that we've met, what we're hearing on the street about the industry, you know, like, and we're very much in that every day. And so we're trying to take the podcast in that direction because we feel like, yes, we can have another interview with this person, or yes, we can have but like the nitty gritty and the honesty behind what's happening in our industry and like the different roles we have in the industry and how we're navigating that is so important.
Yeah, I mean, like learning from others is the best way to kind of facilitate yourself into whatever comes next.
And to answer Haley's question about metrics,
I want to hear about those metrics. They're all pretty sexy.
So I'm developing right now, and I should have by the first one at the end of May, an AI workflow. Yeah, hate me, whatever, but it's AI, like it's fine. It's an AI workflow. It's not going to take away your creativity. It'll be a coded workflow that takes all of the forms from the attendees virtually and in person and generates a summary of all of the nitty gritty and the overall topics of what is lacking and what isn't. So you could either like look at all those feedback forms individually and be like, here's each one. But a lot of the time our brains compartmentalize, especially when you're like, this one person didn't like it. And it's like, okay, it's not important if one person didn't like it. It's important if the majority of people didn't like it. Because if you feel proud with it, you shouldn't change it with just one person. So yes, read all of them. That's fine. But what I'm doing is I want to take a housing folder of like all of those forms and then have it get summarized and transcribed into like key quotes, key things that aren't working based off of the like very specific questions that we are asking that I spoke about, like the macro and micro questions for themes, characters, dialogue, and the technical even. And then what that will do is filmmakers will ideally have a link sent to them the next day when all of the feedback is in with all of that feedback ready, so that filmmakers who are part of it know that, oh, I can, start my next editing session within 48 hours of getting all this feedback, and not have to wait for us to be like, here's the compiled feedback, or like, here's everything, and then it's their jobs to go through it. So hopefully that'll be ready for the first one, but I'm really excited about that.
And when she says very specific, like there are on the ones, can you read a few of the questions from the one that you created for Murphy's Ranch?
Sure.
Because it really does get very in depth about like, did you notice this one tiny moment when this happened? You know, like on your first viewing, did you see this thing that actually is important? Does it need to be more emphasized? Does it not? Like, did you hear this sound that is actually very important, or did it pass you by? That kind of thing, so that like, when you go back into your edit to like start, tweaking things, like what actual specific moments you need to change or augment, or what you can completely lose, and still tell the story.
Yeah. Let me grab it. I have it right here.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be able to have all those elements accessible and just ready for you. It's something that, generally speaking, it takes. If you send the movie to a bunch of friends and you ask them for feedback, generally speaking, you get like 90% is. Even when I send my screenplays or my films to friends that I admire and I care for, I know there is generally just one or two who will truly go in depth of what could be beneficial for me. So having those questionnaires available, making them truly specific and accessible, it's massive.
It also keeps it kind of impersonal too, not in a bad way, but just kind of separates you from like the emotional friction you have with someone you know, or you're talking to someone face to face, being like, "What do you think of the thing that I poured my life and money into?" And
I've been there.
You know? Yeah, that's hard to be like, well, it's not really working. But if it's just feedback, and it ends up happening in like a very, a more cerebral way than like creative discussion kind of way.
Yeah. So I recently did this test because we were doing a short film with a pretty quick turnover. And I was like, let's do a test screening. And I can put this kind of like to the test as well, this survey and feedback form, because the editor sent a feedback form they use, and I saw it and I was like, this is not up to my standard. Like, it was very general. It was very like, could be applied to anything. And that's not what we want to do. And that's why we're going to work with filmmakers to figure out kind of, this is how you're going to build out your form. I'm going to give you the template. I'm going to give you the guidelines. And then we'll execute this and then gather all the material and data. So for this test screening, not only do we capture obviously the viewer demographics for age and how they identify and their industry role, which I'm now going to have to just like fill out as I go. And Mikey's going to be like, I got a new form. So then we go into general questions, and that's something like, how would you rate this film? How emotionally engaged you are? How clear was the story? So like very general, not story specific. What was the slowest part of the film? Fastest part of the film? Would you recommend this film? And then it's really fun. It gets like more intense, and it goes, please rate each character's impact on the story from 1 to 5. And it's, a grid, and we have each character and you rate them from weakest to strongest. Then we actually have rate each actor's performance. Like, who did you connect with? What did you think of the film's ending? What character were you rooting for? Did this change as the story went on? Whose story do you think it is? What do you think the film was ultimately about? Was there any moment you misunderstood or would want to rewatch? Was there a character who confused you? How would you describe the tone? And then we gave them options. Did the tone remain consistent or did it change? If you had to compare this to other films, what would they be? And I love this question. And I had an argument with Mikey about it because he was like, I don't need to know what people's references were. And I said, but what if people said something that you never expected? Or what if they said something that's very aligned, but you just didn't watch that movie or know about it, And we got a few back where I was like, this is really interesting, What image, line, or moment stuck with you the most? What did the film make you feel after watching it? And then we gave them answers. And then macro questions. So themes, relationships, and world building questions. So I'll just give you like 5 so I don't have to keep going on about it because you're probably bored of this already, but and you haven't watched the film. But what did you think of the relationship between the father and son? What did you think of the relationship between the brothers? Did you think Thomas truly believes he's in the neo-Nazi cause? Why? Or why not? Did this, idea specifically, and then we listed, intrigue you? Do you understand the purpose of the medication? Yes or no? Based on their backstories, do you believe the pool technicians are originally compelled to, save this person? So it gets very much into like from general going into like the specifics of the story, which is really helpful because not only is it like, were people paying attention, but it's also like, where's the overlap? Because if everyone's like, I don't like that character, but you're like, ooh, that character's supposed to be my protagonist. Why is that not working? And hopefully it's specific enough that you can be like, it's specific enough that you can then have stuff to fix the problem already because you can see who was the protagonist to people. Right. Or based on the coverage that you decided to cut to at those parts with pacing, how it's affected.
And sometimes those short films are made to be proof of concept for feature films. And having that question asked where you think the story is revolving around specific characters. So you're like, you have developed something to be going in a specific direction. And then all of a sudden you get feedback from several people who said, I think you're spending too much time with that character. Totally. And you're like, but that's going to be the character of my feature.
Supposed to be.
And that raises question on what am I going to do next?
Totally.
So like, I think this program for a lot of the films that may circulate or that may come our way can also benefit whatever it's going to be next.
Yeah.
if the purpose of the short is to become a feature.
Correct.
Yeah. What's next? Do you let this one go? Do you have enough? Do you reshoot? Do you
try a different
do you re-edit? And then, what's going to work for the life of the film that you want to have?
And it might surprise you. And then I won't read anymore, but the final one is micro questions. And those are specific lines, details, symbolism, and clarity around stuff. So having all of this feedback is like such a wealth of information for filmmakers, especially because not in addition to them spending their own money, they spend a lot of their own time on it, like from writing it to producing it to actually making it to being in post with it and then on the festival run. Like having it for like a year to 5 years, depending on what it is, under your belt and like trying to just like get out into the world, this feedback is a lot, but it's really invaluable to those filmmakers. So.
And I recently had the experience of somebody sending me a cut of their film, and they were having some trouble, and they asked me for feedback, and they didn't know if they had the right people for whatever the film needed next. And I was like, oh, you should really talk to that person. Why don't you have a conversation with that sound designer? Why don't you look into the work of that VFX supervisor or that VFX artist? And this filmmaker ended up working with all my recs. She had an amazing time with them. She really built a team of people that believed in the project, were incredibly talented, and I've seen the film. The film is incredible.
Oh, fantastic.
Like sometimes like those environment can also be supportive of finding the right team for whatever comes next. And I didn't had much experience with VFX until I met Chad Peter, and
who's going to be a mentor with us.
Who's going to be a mentor. He's incredible. He will never brag about himself, but I will. I should be his manager. That's what he tells me all the time.
Good.
Manager, he's not firing you. I'm not, just so you know. But he's incredible, and he has quite an extensive curriculum working with the most amazing filmmaker out there. Inarritu, Sam Esmail, Fincher, you name it. He has worked with them. And working with them, like, being on set on a short, on a proof of concept that he wanted to direct, and like learning about VFX on set, where he would tell me, oh, like, no, don't worry, we can do this later. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to set it up. I was blown away, and following him throughout the process of building those VFX and like knowing what are the possibility of when somebody that talented is on board, or it's incredible.
Yeah.
Post-production is magic.
It is, and we need to learn more about it over here at CFA, because that's like our next iteration of, it's what we're doing.
This is what we're doing next.
And so there we are. We're already there.
We're going to learn about it.
And so, Gio, thank you so much for being on the pod with us and talking about this incredible program. We're excited to have you.
Thank you, guys.
Program director of. If you'd like to learn more, or you'd like to apply to the Not WIP program we have, you'll just go to the CFA or the Not Film Fest websites, and you'll find it under programs on CFA's website, and you can apply. You can read through our handbook, you can read through expectations, kind of like how to be eligible and also how to make yourself ineligible for it, and then you can apply, and Gio is reading all of the applications that come through, and then we'll be selecting them. And the best part is, even if you're not selected for that round, you're still invited to attend and still learn from someone like Chad, or learn from the kind of feedback process and see how it's run and give your own feedback. And so we want to always make sure that, even if you're not directly involved, you can still be a part of it. And that's kind of how we're going to be doing it. So.
Also, if you're not accepted for a certain round, it doesn't mean you're not right for another round.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's kind of like film festivals. There's a theme. There are certain things we're bringing certain mentors in to look at certain things.
Yes.
So it's not just a no. It's not ever just a rejection. There's always something else. So
And this is going to be a year-round program, so there will be multiple calls, and quarterly calls. And so, yeah, absolutely. Don't give up on yourself.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for joining us back in the CFA podcast here at CFA Studios. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Join us in bridging the gap between talent and crew. Start by subscribing on your preferred podcast platform, sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date on vendor discounts, community events, and new podcast releases, and educate yourself through our free course releases on YouTube. It all starts at cinematographyforactors.com. And if you like this episode, consider leaving a review to make it easier for other listeners to find us.